That way, I figure if one of us says something that's gold, then we didn't miss it, right?
Right. Yeah.
That so often happens.
Yeah. But one thing that wasn't missed is the barber that I went to. Man, I had a 1960 something Lincoln Hayes. That's probably a little before your time. Everybody my age knows Link Hayes from the TV show. I forgot the name of the show, but he had a fro, man. That thing was like,
Oh yeah,
right. So was I about last week, and I went to
yeah. I was gonna say, I remember. Yeah.
he got me. I told him same length all the way around, but
Is
he
it
wasn't. I wasn't looking in the mirror when he was doing it. So.
Oh, oh, it took too much.
Oh man, yeah. But I kind of wanted it the same all the way around, for film TV sake sort of thing,
Okay. I thought maybe the heat was just getting to you. It's been getting kind of hot here.
Oh, it has. It will do that. Of course,
Yeah.
I'm back in my hometown now after all that time in Europe, for instance. But no, man, performance money. Trust me, you can take the heat when you're getting paid.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Yeah.
Sure.
The price is right. Anything can be fun.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt.
Oh man. So, we were talking last year about, we were doing the Gwen Berry talk, and I had someone specifically asked for you. They said, you need to get Nathan back on here. So
Really?
I'm a man that delivers.
Yeah.
We got Nathan.
Oh, wow. I'm honored. That's man, that's okay.
Yeah. No pressure or anything, but all eyes on you now.
Okay.
We're all ears.
I'm not a sensation. We just lost Kevin Samuels. I don't know if you know who he was, but
no, I don't
big
recognize.
Guy, deliberately. I enjoyed his show. Deliberately controversial, because I guess the higher the shock value, the more people are going to love you and or hate you.
Right.
But so from somebody asks for me, and we just lost, a YouTube sensation, one of the highest paid guys on YouTube and one of the most watched. And yeah, well, I'm Samuels, but it's a privilege that somebody asked for me back, kind of thing, and it's an even bigger privilege that I'm allowed to be on your show.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about, we've been kind of discussing different issues the last couple of weeks. I mean, we talk about a lot of things anyway, but I was kind of thinking, maybe we could just talk about like how we met, and maybe you could share your perspective on how we met, and then I'll share my perspective on how we met, and then maybe we can branch out from there. Does that sound good?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, I'm happy to tell your listeners that it was my absolute pleasure to have met you. The first time we met, we were processing into Mild High School to work as substitute teachers at Sacramento High School, Sac High. And there was just something about this young man that just, you came across clean, man. I mean, I think we sat next to each other or no more than one person away as we were, getting the briefings, and then got lunch, and you just seemed pure, man. I mean, just something. I said, man, I don't even know this guy, but man, I like this dude. He's a real cool guy, And I never forgot that. And actually, I think you worked at SAC for a year, maybe two or something.
Mm-hmm.
I see you again, and I was like, well, what happened to Chris? And how we ran into each other. Was it at the gym or something?
Yes, I believe it was. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And man, I don't think I said anything then. I said, man, it's such a relief to find this guy again, because
right.
you had that much of an impact. So I think that, as I go on and on, but for you to have a voice to the public at large is a great thing. And for other people to experience how true, real, and pure you are, committed to, in my opinion, issues and correct interpretation of societal goings on, I think is an absolute blessing.
Well, thank you. I'll give you your check after the show for the money I paid you to say all that. I'm embarrassed now because I was like, oh man, I wasn't trying to make it look like I was setting it up for you to shower me with compliments.
It's the truth.
I thought that. Well, I appreciate that. I thought I wanted to kind of have us both share it because everybody has their own perspective on things, and
Right.
I thought that Sac High in particular and subbing as well was a very unique place to meet because Sac High was actually the first school that I subbed at when I started subbing.
Same
And
here.
so it was a very new experience for me and not always the easiest place to sub.
Right.
And much like what you said, I do remember every morning I remember going to the front to that desk at the office and they would give you your assignment for the day. And I would always run into you. And it was always just like, good morning, how are you? And kind of like what you said, I was like, there's something about this guy, like you just had that presence. And I mean, the really cool deep baritone voice kind of helps too, just got that commanding presence, almost like a Morgan Freeman narrator kind of thing or something. I was like, but I was always happy to see you. It was always just like,
likewise, Chris.
it was like a breath of fresh air for like the calm before the storm when you walk into the classroom and you take heat from the kids all day. It was nice to have that moment.
We went through some monsoons and some tidal waves.
Yeah. And I always remember, I know we talked about it before, but I really learned a lot from you about teaching when we had that testing day. I know we've talked about this before where I was kind of your assistant. I think it was the STAR testing or the SAT-9. And some kids, as they do, were acting out in class. And I was nervous. I remember because I wasn't even actually in a teaching position at that time. I was kind of like helping you out with administrative stuff. And I was kind of watching. I was getting nervous because I'm like, okay, I know you, but I've never really seen you in action before. I'm like, are we going to see the bad cop version of Nathan here? But it was pretty cool the way you handled it. It was very just kept it chill. And I remember the way you just picked one person, kind of like you picked the leader of the pack and kind of singled her out. And it was just, I was just watching you work your magic. It was really cool to see that. And it's a good lesson that you can keep your composure and still kind of assert, your position.
And what we did was, we utilize, of course, what I call kid psychology. I mean, there's basic human psychology and there's kid psychology.
Right.
Human psychology doesn't work on them until they become, sort of 100% human, in other words, they grow themselves.
Right.
And yeah, a lot of what they do is for attention. It's for, 99% of the time, it's for attention. And so you sort of get, keep that in mind. And I learned how not to respond like, we often did in the military. You start as high as you need to get their mission accomplished immediately. But I like to get them on my side, and on different days, different things work, and I think that you sort of do a quick analysis of whatever situation is raising its ugly head in class, and you apply what feels like would be the appropriate measures, appropriate responses for that instance. And much like in the same way, I think that politically / ideologically, when we're interpreting things as adults, like I consider myself, I'm actually a moderate, okay? And I think that, different things work at different times. I mean, I have parameters, social parameters that I stay within. But I think sometimes I'm in the middle, sometimes I'm over to the left, sometimes I'm over to the right, because it takes, again, flexibility is important in leadership. You have to be able to respond in front of a classroom, sitting in the White House, and everything in between. Yeah. But, I've had so many tidal waves, students, because I still sub,
Mhm.
that I forgot. I remember the day you're talking about, but I forgot what kid it was, what she said or did or wouldn't do or whatever, I don't remember it precisely,
Yeah.
but I know that I think by that point I was becoming familiar with kid psychology, you see. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I don't remember exactly what she said either, but all I remember is you just gave her this this look, this very serious, almost like the way you're looking at me right now, but a little bit more disappointed, a little bit more of like a serious kind of, and you just said like, are we gonna have a problem? Something to that effect, or are we gonna have problems? But it was, you weren't asking the class, you were asking just her.
Mhm.
And I really, and it's interesting because that part of it, I know there is the kid psychology and adult psychology, but I have used that in the real world with grown-up adults too. And sometimes that is a powerful thing. And in a roundabout way, it almost kind of comes back to the one of the themes that I talk about a lot on the podcast, which is just the idea of groupthink and
Right.
confirmation bias, and sort of like how people kind of huddle together in their little groups and they feel empowered. You kind of took that away from her because you just talked to her. You're like, I'm not going to compete with the whole class. So, and it really seemed to work. It was a powerful moment. I still think about that. I think it was a good lesson.
Sometimes you take the ringleader. It's like, what do you call that? Decap, decap, right? Okay, you
Yeah.
chop the head off the snake, and most other snakes are not going to bother you. You see, like,
Right.
whoa, I don't want that to happen to me,
Right.
So, yeah,
I think the thing that really stuck with me the most is, I'm not always the most patient man in the world. I can acknowledge that. We have to be aware of our own
sure,
shortcomings. And I know that I can get frustrated. And the fact that you were able to get that kind of just such a quick stopping in her tracks, and in a way that affected everybody else, and you didn't lose your composure, because the,
right.
the second you lose your composure, then you've lost, right? I mean, you have to be in control.
Kids know that they've got you, they won. Oftentimes they'll do things just to get a response out of the teacher because guess what? They can talk about that at lunch and probably every day after school for the next week.
Right.
Did you see Mr. Marlowe? Well, we really got it. I mean, they love that, right? Especially
Right.
a sub. You know,
Right, absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. So what were your thoughts? I mean, what did you want to talk about? I know there's a lot of stuff going on in the news. I know that I wanted to kind of start with the school topic because obviously there's a very tragic event that happened last week. We don't have to talk about that. I mean, we could talk about, if you had, I know we've shared some thoughts about those sorts of things, and you know, what were you thinking? Where did you want to go?
Yeah, I'll tell you, Chris, reference to school shootings with an S,
Yeah.
man, it's hard to keep up. It's just,
Right.
it's commonplace, you know?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm an American, plain and simple. I'm an American, right?
Mhm.
This is my home. I love it, point blank. But I'm glad that I'm relieved that my family's growing up in Europe,
Mm.
like my granddaughter, right?
Right.
Um, I mean, there are other things to worry about, but getting shot at school is not one of them. And so, I think that we've become sadly, tragically almost desensitized to just shootings in general, because I mean, shootings are nothing new here. I mean, people get shot every day. I think for the first
Oh,
2 months of the year in Sacramento, there was something like 30 shootings or 40 shootings or something. I don't know,
yeah.
20 something. It was just a bad start to the year.
Oh, yeah.
That, that's just, it was news, but it wasn't shocking because shootings, murders, things like that happen all the time. School shootings are more attention grabbing because you're talking about defenseless children,
Yeah.
not a crook shooting a crook, right?
Right.
But some dude that's you know whose elevator doesn't go all the way to the top, gets mad at something, who knows what, nobody knows what, probably a shrink would know exactly what, then decides to go to a school, maybe his school, maybe because he was bullied or whatever, who knows why, and then murder everybody, right?
Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, yeah, you summed it up pretty accurately with the uniqueness of our country when it comes to gun violence. Obviously, you know, whether you're talking about school shootings or at a mall or just individuals, but you know, the school shooting, and then specifically the elementary school age shooting, which of course we started with Sandy Hook, which just uh, I don't know if I've ever talked about this with you, but the day that Sandy Hook happened, I was doing an in-class observation. That was when I was studying to become an actual teacher. And I was actually doing an observation at my old school, my old middle school. And I remember I was sitting in one of my teacher's classes that I had when I was 12, feeling way bigger than I did when I last had been there, walking the halls, looking at everything looking a lot smaller than I remembered, and just having this really nostalgic, just kind of taking everything in. It was a neat experience. And then I got in my car and put on NPR, and I found out what happened at Sandy Hook. And I just sat there and cried. And, you know, being at my old school at the time too, I just thought, you know, where have we gone? I mean, I get it, you know, like you said, I mean, there's any number of reasons that people can have to do something horrible like that, but school shootings, and then children in particular, I mean, you know, they're hardened criminals, drug dealers, murderers, even, who they will destroy somebody that if they hurt children, right? I mean, if you're in prison and you hurt children, I mean, you can't be in general population. There's like a code among even the most hardened criminals. What kind of a person and mindset, like what does someone have to go through I can't even comprehend how you go there. How do you get from whatever injured you, where whatever happened to you, how do you jump from that to kids?
I think, well, there's some psychosis, right? But I think that maybe, just maybe, a person who's in so much pain, has a little bit of, you know, is a little bit crazy, and is doing this to get attention and or to cause pain in others, you probably can't cause more pain than that, than to go and shoot third and fourth graders. You see,
right?
I mean, the mother of one of those hardened criminals that you just spoke of would be sad if her son got shot and killed, right? Or killed in prison or something like that. But, you know, I mean, he's been in the game, but for someone to shoot, I mean, 7, 8, 9-year-olds or younger sometimes, I think these people want to cause, they're in pain. So it's like, well, I hurt, so I'm going to make sure everybody else hurts too, you know? And I think that some of these guys, I'm no shrink, I think you know that, but some of these guys, I think it's become sensationalized, and some of them might figure that, well, I got no chance in life to ever be anything, or I'm always going to feel low or be nothing or whatever. Here's my chance to get famous and go out in a blaze of glory, and they're going to mention my name for years to come.
They'll make a movie out of you. I mean, I think they're making a movie about the Parkland shooter right now. I think, or they might have already. I don't know, but yeah, they glorify some of these people, really. So I mean, yeah, if you quickest way to get to fame, I guess. But do you think, because it sounds like the way you're describing it, it's almost like, you know, you hear these stories of like an ex-husband or ex-boyfriend who wants to hurt his wife or girlfriend as much as he can, and he kills their children. I mean, because like you said, that's the most painful way you could punish somebody. So is this like a version of that with society? You know, like this is society's children?
Could be. You know, I'm careful to say, yep, that's what it is.
Yeah,
and I'll bet
of course.
that's what it is. But I think that in some cases, some dudes are so far off kilter, you know, we could only speculate.
Right.
Right. I mean, that same guy might have been an upstanding, a normal guy, or a normal citizen yesterday,
Hmm.
but maybe he had a bad dream or saw the wrong thing on TV or had a crush on a girl for the last 5 years, and he asked her out and she said, I have a boyfriend already. I mean, somebody who's that far off,
Right.
they're tough to understand. They're tough for a shrink to understand, in my opinion.
Oh
Right.
yeah.
And you just never know. Now, I think the more this stuff happens, the more that people who are already a little bit off balance it'll become more, I could do that,
Right.
or yeah, that might work for me too, or something. So the
Mhm.
more it happens, the more that the people who really don't need to see those kinds of things are going to be, sort of inspired, for lack of a better word, to do that, or to figure that, well, I understand why he did it. And they still talk about Dylan Roof and other guy, to this day. Well, man, I'm going to get famous like that, I guess.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
why do you, what did third and fourth graders do to this guy? So it's not, I just can't imagine that he's thinking, well, those third and fourth graders at that school wronged me somehow, right? I mean, when he was in third and fourth grade, they weren't even born yet, you see?
Right.
So I just don't know that we'll ever be able to put our fingers on it. As long as these guys have, where I'm going with this, well, I don't know. Based on the interpretation by some of the Constitution, one specific amendment,
Mhm.
everybody in the country should be able to have access to whatever weapon they want,
Right.
right? Now guess what? I'm not the president. I'm not in either house. It's not my call. All I can do is vote about it and talk about it.
Right.
But I think that this is I want to. This is a debate. I want to see some stuff happen, one way or the other. I want to see something happen. I want to see both sides say, you know what, we're going to fix this. Now, one side might say, well, you know what, the way to fix it is everybody needs to have 2 assault weapons apiece. I mean, guess what? If that's what it comes to, then I don't know. I'm not in a position to change it. Or they might say, you know what, that's it. No, you don't need an assault weapon to hunt. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, maybe even handguns, right? They're too easy to hide. You want to
Right.
prevent your house and protect your family and maybe go hunt. I hate even saying that word as a vegetarian, with 26 years, but then you shotgun,
Mhm.
shot or rifle or something that you can't hide, and that can't go automatic. Okay.
Right.
But do something one
Yeah.
way. Don't stay in the middle talking about it, ensuring that nothing gets done. Do
Right.
something, because people are being murdered. That's why I think that, and I don't support this at all, but that guy went and shot up when the senators and congressmen were having that softball game back in DC.
Oh
And they
yeah.
shot him up. I think he was sending a message. Okay, well, it's okay with you as long as this happens to regular people.
Mm.
Let's see what you do when it happens to you. That's
Right.
what I know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess that makes sense. By such a conflating of different issues here, right? I mean, there's mental health, there's access to guns, there's security, or there's policing. I mean, even when you get back to like the defunding the police, I mean, you get a police response like you got in Texas last week,
Mhm.
and maybe it's not necessarily, yeah, what we were saying about defunding the police. Remember that? Not maybe it's not necessarily
I don't want to defund the police.
defunding the police, maybe not defunding, but maybe
Right.
refocusing our funding into more
Yep.
effective training, because I don't know where they got trained to think that standing around outside of a school, I mean, they were out there for almost an hour.
Really?
They did that. Yeah, they weren't letting parents were trying to get in and to go save their kids, and they're begging the police to let them in because the police weren't going in. And they wasn't for like 45 minutes to an hour. And, I was thinking, like, for all these people that are saying we need to throw more guns into the mix, we need to arm teachers. I mean, and a similar thing happened in Parkland. I don't think it was quite to that degree. I think it was just the one officer initially, but he also hesitated and didn't go in.
I remember that one.
Yeah. And I mean, again, yeah, I'm not saying defund the police, but you look at a response like that, I mean, you wonder where that mindset comes from about that police aren't, I had a friend of mine who's also a teacher who said, if you really want to arm teachers, if you want to have me shoot at domestic terrorists, you need to quadruple my salary. I mean, because if we don't see the police doing that, how do you expect a teacher to, know what to do?
Also, look, if you have an area that's a target, that's a goal. You're gonna target you're gonna target the people who can take you down. You're gonna get them first. So if there's a campus monitor, somebody that is packing, right. Well, so I'm not even gonna, I don't wanna go there too much, but
right.
I support good cops. I support good cops to the hilt, right? Mm-hmm. Now, not all cops are good, but another thing to consider is that, we might need to have some more training, right? Because sometimes these guys can get scared, shoot people that are unarmed that they shouldn't shoot, this kind of thing. And I don't think that's always based on hatred or racism or whatever. Sometimes it is, but sometimes these guys might have, predispositions or biases and figure that, oh man, you know what, I better take this dude down before, and then you insert whatever you want,
Right.
Because how do you justify shooting someone when they're unarmed? And then this is always for the same reason, because I feared for my life.
Right.
So that doesn't cut ice.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously this can get into a bunch of other issues, not the least of which being police brutality against blacks. But I also thought of something, when you talked about, because we do hear we hear the feared for my life defense quite a bit. But it is possible for even, and I want to start off by saying I'm not trying to like pull a reverse racism card here and say that like blacks are just as bad, like black cops are just as bad as white cops. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just trying to say I've seen a few examples where a black officer is being, apparently it seems to be racist towards another black. I've seen that on a couple occasions. And actually the shooter who, I don't know how much of this is public knowledge, but
I'm gonna say
for Stephon Clark.
Yep.
Yeah, I went to high school with him.
Wow.
So okay. Yeah, I went to high school. I knew him personally, and would definitely not think that he was racist at all. So like to your point, I don't think that it's necessarily always racism. You went
to high school with the police officer shot, or Stephon Clark?
I went to high school with the police officer who shot him.
Yep.
And I knew him pretty well. I mean, he was a nice, funny guy. He wrote in my yearbook. I mean, I would not have thought that he was racist as far as I knew him. So I just think, to your point, I don't think that it's necessarily purely racism. There might be an element of maybe past experience, maybe like certain biases, or maybe, I mean, I'm just speculating here. I have no idea, but maybe he had an abusive father or uncle who Stephon Clark somehow fit the mold, and again, I'm just speculating. I don't know this, but I just, like you said, I mean, there could be any number of reasons why these things happen, but it does, to like what you said about the trend with school shootings, there does seem to be a disproportionate amount of these kinds of shootings happening to Black Americans when you compare them to the population at large.
Oh yeah, we're the only ones that get shot by police when we're unarmed. You know,
Right.
it's just, sadly, that's almost as frequent as, mass shootings.
Right.
A very dear friend of mine, who went to law school, met her fiance, who was going to another law school, prestigious one. They married, they have 4 beautiful kids, and she is no racist, that's for sure, right? But it's kind of came up in debate based on Black Lives Matter debates, windows being smashed, Air Jordans being taken, this kind of thing, and I sort of summed it up like this. I don't think that tearing up anything is the right thing to do. I think that you always stay within the parameters of the law, and that's against the law. So it was not, a good thing to do. But I looked at it like this: if in 20 years, no more unarmed young men, basically always Black, are being shot and killed, murdered, in my opinion, by police officers, and always for the same reason, I fear for my life. In 20 years, that probably will have saved 500 lives, maybe 1,000, compared to 1,000 windows being smashed and 10,000 pairs of Air Jordans being snatched, right? Maybe 20 or 30 buildings being torched. If you could put that on a scale and weigh each, 1,000 lives versus 1,000 windows, what would the history book say? What they would say, in my opinion, is because of these, just sort of almost arbitrary murders of unarmed young Black men, 1,000 windows got smashed, or the insurance company had to pay for 1,000 windows and 10,000 pair of Air Jordans and 15 or 20 buildings, but 1,000 people are alive now that wouldn't be. You see, if you look at it like that, I don't want people to tear up things, but what I was trying to explain to her is it became a life-saving move, a life-saving endeavor, right? To stop murders by people that are paid for, and we should be able to trust them, you see. So, the question, I might be getting off track a little bit, but the question to me, the ultimate question is, to someone who says, you know what, no matter what, you shouldn't break windows. And I almost agree with that. But when you're saving lives, and so I guess the ultimate comeback, okay, name me the last 5 unarmed white men that got shot and killed by police officers. Then I'd say, take your time. I can name 15 or 20 without going to Google, right? Could probably name 100 or 200 if I went to Google, you see. So
yeah, I had a similar conversation actually on Facebook at one point, where the person was trying to make an argument to that effect, that it's sort of the way the media frames it makes it seem a lot worse than it is. And I said, just show me one. Just name the last white guy that was unarmed and murdered by a cop. And he gave me one example. I don't remember the guy's name. And there was a link to it, and it was 20 years ago, and it was like at night, and it was something where he was like running away, and it was dark, and I don't know if he was, all the details, but this was like one time like 20 years ago, and it was like a fuzzy picture, you know what I mean? And it was just, that was the best he could do, and I'm like, okay, there's your one. Here, I got a list of 15 right here. Yep. Continue. Like, we could just go back and forth. Let's see who can go the farthest. I'll give you an example, you give me an example.
He could give me an example, I can give him 20, right? I think of one more, and this was a sad situation. I think it was in Utah. It was in Utah or Montana, one of those states, where a Caucasian kid was listening to his he had his, he's listening to music, right? And so the police officer, I guess he looked like the suspect or something like that. And so the police officer, black police officer, had him to stop, turn around, and told him, gave him an order, told him to do something, and kid couldn't hear it. So he reaches down to punch his, the pause button, which is down by his waist. He reached, and the cop shot him, right? He was unarmed, didn't deserve to get shot, couldn't hear the instructions, so the cop kind of probably in that situation, I could almost, he was going for his waist.
Right.
Yeah, tragic.
Right.
But honestly, I posted that on my Facebook page as soon as I heard it, saying that, you know what, this dude needs to be sanctioned. I mean, I can see how there was some sort of mitigating circumstances, but he still, in my opinion, he shot an unarmed guy. He still needs to be sanctioned. Shoot him in the leg, or I don't know, something. But doesn't matter what. I mean, if a black dude, if a black cop does it, that's just as wrong.
There's something wrong with a society where you have these incidences of these trigger happy cops. I mean, choke, like Eric Garner, for example, like just choking the man to death, or of course, George Floyd. We live in a society that produces police officers that will do that and then will fail to respond at all when a school of Hispanic children are being murdered.
Right.
I mean, that's a pretty eye-opening thing to experience.
I didn't know that they stayed outside. A buddy of mine says that on Facebook, but I haven't read the details. They sat outside for an hour.
It was worse. I knew initially that they had delayed going in and they weren't letting parents in, but just yesterday I was reading more into it, and they actually, it was like 45 minutes to an hour before they actually put some parents in handcuffs to keep them from going in. And you see, it's very easy for me as a white privileged male in this country to call a spade a spade. I can look. I see the incidences of like a Philando Castile, somebody who's just following a police command, getting shot to death, murdered, and then I see in the same society a school of Hispanic kids and the police not going in to save them. I mean, I don't know what I'm supposed to take from that. What are you trying to tell me here, right?
I think some heads are going to roll on that one.
You said
45 minutes and there's an active shooter inside.
Yeah.
I think some people are going to retire or find some new jobs or something.
Yeah.
See, that's the training,
Yeah.
It wouldn't take that long to get the SWAT team in there. These guys, even regular cops have flak vests and all this kind of thing, and I'm guessing by that point, somebody called and said there's one shooter they could probably even identify the type of weapon, if not exactly, what it was.
Right.
Well, they know what you're up against. Well, I've got a question for you as we get ready to get started.
Yeah.
What if had this discussion with my daughter last night, who lives again, overseas, and she has went into another career, kind of in not the tech world, but the what do you call it? I don't know, social media world kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. And I thought, but you know what, she's pretty interesting. What would you think about doing your own podcast? She's not really a camera front kind of person, but so I wondered, what would be a good subject for her, and what do you think would be, for instance, a good subject for me if I was to do that?
Oh, for you?
Or if we could solicit, audience members to I don't know, come up with what they think might be a good sort of subject matter for me. I'm not a Kevin Samuels. I'm not the expert on relationship advice. Okay, that's not me. I'm not a pro, but
I don't know, like if you were going solo, basically.
Yeah, if one day, for instance.
Um, hmm. I think you have a unique perspective of being, I mean, you're a veteran, you're a teacher, you're vegan, you're
Good.
obviously you're obviously vegetarian. Um, vegetarian is a lot easier, by the way, than vegan. Just saying.
Did both. I've been vegetarian for 26 years, a quarter century.
Really?
It was
Um,
for 10 months. It wasn't that tough. It really wasn't.
yeah.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, I think just like combining all those experiences, I'm sure you've got a lot of good stories, and I mean, I I learn something new from you every time we talk. I think it's interesting that you identify as moderate, because I think you're pretty darn left, but I guess I'm going off of American standards. I think you're probably moderate. You're like European moderate,
Right.
right? You're
Spent 6 great years in Europe.
really,
I didn't have Hollywood aspirations. I'd be back in Europe next week. You know?
yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
so I guess yeah, I would say you're like, because American left is not that far
Right.
left, like on an international scale, right? So, but yeah, I mean, I think that you've got a lot of good experience there, and I always just enjoy. I say that with a grain of salt, because I've also blocked a lot of people that you talk with on Facebook because I can't stand them, but I enjoy kind of observing you kind of dissect some of their logical fallacies, to put it nicely. So
I, I
I
think
think you've
I
got skills there too.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think that's one of your skill sets, is that, you're very good, you're very well informed, and you speak your side very, very well and articulately. And I think that hey, maybe you could get like a right wing person, and you could have like an old school Hannity and Colmes type thing where you guys sort of debate the issues or something.
Mm, okay. Yeah. You know, as it turns out, I would bet that a lot of extreme right wing guys have either blocked me or
Mm,
spent my time talking to him. You
yeah.
know, uh,
I definitely have. I've had my experience with that too. People like unfriending me or blocking me, and I actually have one friend who kind of followed my channel a little bit, and he said you should have a Trump supporter on your show. And I was like, I don't know if I don't. There's not a lot of Trump supporters that I think would want to be on my show, and I don't necessarily just going off of like what I've seen in some of them, the way they behave. But this guy actually turned out he is a Trump supporter, but
mm,
he's a guy that I went to high school with. He was always nice to me. Um, and he seems like a decent guy. So I don't know, maybe there's room for something like that, maybe some kind of political discourse. I've never really had anybody on who really disagrees with me. So maybe
right.
there's room.
And
Yeah.
you don't now. But doing the hypothetical, here's what a Trump supporter would say. Well, Chris, you're too far left. You left-o wing nuts are gonna give the country away, and we need to make America great again, and we need to, you know, uh, make it like it ought to be, like it used to be, like
Right.
when our grandparents said it was great. And Trump is tough on crime, and he really cares, and he's not going to give anything away. How would you respond to any of that?
Um, well, which part? I mean, I guess I'd start with the when was it great and for whom? Who was it great for? Because
Mm.
you telling me that it was better for black folks back in the 50s and 60s? I mean, I know things aren't always great now, but was it was it great? I mean, I guess I'd start there and just clarify who we're talking about, who it was greater for. Um,
Now, already, you've, in my opinion, you've won already, because what happens in many cases, I see this more and more in um, I don't like to be insulted, but you know, some people I just think don't judge times and the issues objectively, right? They would, the guy who I know that you blocked would start speaking rhetorically or start spitting rhetoric, right? Nothing to do with the topic at hand.
Right.
And will say things like to suggest, he's pretty brainy actually. And we and I are still pals on Facebook. We've gotten past ourselves. We laugh now about everything, you know.
Right.
But that I think that some of the guys, and you know, he's not he drives a truck kind of thing, right? You know, but they get this, you know, debate pattern from their heroes on Fox News and from Rush Limbaugh, who started this. Rush started the whole thing. Okay, he like the Kardashians. He created a genre, right? I like the Kardashians genre much better, but he created a genre. He got paid. He was making 40 million at the top of his game.
He started right in Sacramento too, by the way.
Yeah.
1530 KFBK.
That's right. You know what? I used to listen to him. I came home on leave once and my mom said, Nathan, I think you'd like this guy, right? I listened to him, and actually I did, because see, when he was here, now I listened to him for 2 weeks and I went back to Europe or wherever I was stationed. But he was about, you know, don't do drugs, work hard, take responsibility, take care of your families, you know, this and this and this. You know, it's kind of like what's the guy's name? The American Boy, two-star general, the actor from the 50s and 60s. Anyway, his name will come to me in a minute. But you know, I said, well, this guy's mainstream. You know, he's fun to listen to and all this kind of thing. Yeah. But the day he went to New York, he went just off the rails. He went straight over the cliff because he had to appeal to the South and the Midwest. I mean, he had to go further right and further extreme and become more insultive and more critical and make less sense, to be honest with you. Right. He made a lot of money because he did that.
Yeah.
I don't know if Rush was really that way. I just don't know. I never met the man. But you know, when he was here, he was probably a moderate Republican, you see.
Right.
Seems that way in the 2 weeks I listened to him while, you know, when I initially heard him.
Yeah. What would you say though that I feel like whatever your personal beliefs are, however you portray yourself publicly, especially if you're a strong influencer like he was, I mean, with the following like that, however you portray yourself, to me, that effectively becomes who you are, because you're spreading that message to people that you know follow you and hang on your every word. And if you're saying things that you don't believe, I mean, obviously that's to me, that's highly irresponsible. But whether you're doing that for money or fame or whatever, you're having that effect that you know you're having. And so don't you you take responsibility for those beliefs, right? Even if you don't truly identify in that way.
You do, but let me tell you how. Here's the caveat I would offer to that. I think 75% of the House and Senate have JDs, have law degrees, right? So we're talking 435 people, okay? No, 535, okay? If memory serves, 435 in the House, 100 in the Senate. All right. Why is it then that, generally speaking, with these above average intelligent people, in numbers, you know, more than 500,000, why do you only have 2 opinions?
Well, my caveat to you would be that you don't necessarily have to be that smart to get a degree.
Well, I think with that many that have JDs, like law, I mean, you figure you got to be 105, 110, right? On the
Sure.
on the IQ scale or higher, right? So you're
Yeah.
talking relatively bright people, but what they do is they get in there and they fall in line. They fall in line,
Sure. Yeah.
afraid because they're not true leaders. Because the number one job in politics is to get reelected. Okay,
Oh yeah.
number one job in entertainment is to stay relative, stay desired by the public, and then get paid. Is those three things: stay relevant, stay desired, get paid, then get
Right.
paid more. Right.
Right.
That's what Rush was doing, in my opinion. You see, now I'm not here to go on a Rush love fest because I think he did a lot of damage. I really do.
Yeah.
But his job was not really to inform. His job was to and maintain, persuade and maintain, rally.
Yeah.
You know what? I believe that if they'd have paid Rush, if they offered Rush 50 million a year, because he topped out at 40 mil per year, and somebody came along and said, we'll give you 50 if you talk about how great Democrats are and the left wing is and how lousy the right wing is, I bet he'd have done it. I bet he would have.
Well, and it's interesting because therein lies the problem with humanity and maybe even, dare I say, capitalism, because I mean, money talks. Everybody has a price. I
Sure.
mean, and you speak money to power. I think that that's my problem with, I mean, even take a guy like a more modern, like a Joe Rogan, who Joe Rogan, to his credit, I don't think he's nearly as bad as Rush Limbaugh, but I do think that Rogan has done damage, especially when it came to like talking about vaccines and talking about ivermectin, the things that he was. I don't know if you know about some of that stuff, but
Oh, yeah.
a lot of misinformation. He did a lot of misinformation about COVID and vaccines, and
Right.
I think that kind of like to your point before about the Second Amendment, which we kind of branched off from that, because I was going to say I actually did a video just a couple of days ago where I talked about this issue, about the Second Amendment specifically. But even with the idea of free speech, we kind of conflate these values and we cling to them as it sees, as it serves our purposes, right? Whether it's the Second Amendment and we cling to our guns, or free speech. I get to go on and have 11 million subscribers on YouTube because I'm just telling it like it is to all these people that I'm saying all the things they want to hear. But when you're saying things that have real world implications and potentially outcomes, I mean, even Donald Trump, Donald Trump got impeached for what he said that led to the insurrection. Of course, he didn't get convicted, but we know that words do have power. And maybe even to your point before about the exposures that some of these school shooters have to what are they seeing in the media, or copycatting other shooters or whatever. How do we deal with that? We're such our world has become just so oversaturated with just stuff, right? Just people talking like you and me right now, but we don't have a big following, so it's okay. Also, we're not spewing nonsense though.
Right.
So
yeah, well, it's a tough, you see, the name of the game in our form of our economic form, right? There's probably no true communism, no true capitalism. Probably everybody is some variation of socialism. You're further to the left, further to the right, sometimes a little bit close to the middle, but probably no one's exactly in the middle of that,
right.
But since we are, if you ask an eighth grader to define capitalism, they probably say, dog eat dog, get mine or get yours, get it now,
Right.
but you can't, right? That's kind of what it is,
Right.
And so there's much less now. Now, I think you've been to Europe before, right?
No, I actually haven't. I've never been out of the country.
Okay, that's all right. That's all right.
Yeah.
You're okay.
Yeah.
So, in Europe, there would be much more I don't know that you see a guy as extreme as Rush, for instance, right? Or it's not likely that you'd see, just mass shooting after mass shooting after mass shooting, and one side of the aisle of any country over there just talk vehemently, debate vehemently about, well, you don't want to invade his constitutional rights, infringe on his constitutional rights.
Right.
You see, whereas here, even if people don't agree with Rush, I know why he did it. He's getting paid, and that's the first order. I mean, and to some, look, it fits with the system I'm in. Get mine, get as much as I can, and keep it, and get some more. Doesn't matter what happens based on what I say. It doesn't really matter.
Right.
You see, I mean, we had a previous president. Don't want to get too political here, but I believe that, I don't think that he inspired the insurrection that day or even that week. He's been talking like that for 5 years.
Right.
The year leading up to the election, and pretty much every day that he was in office.
Right.
Inspired. I think, to me, I think that every president does some good, some bad. Even Trump, he did some things right, okay, in my opinion, right? But to me, the worst thing that he did is he rallied a kind of a previously calmed group of people, and he rallied, he inspired them to very, very, very dangerous heights, in my opinion. See, that's a problem. And his game was to stay in office. I think had he stayed in office, he would have been unprosecutable, because the things that he's being investigated for would have timed out. The statute of limitations would have run out. 7 years. He would have been in 8 years. Too late. Can't get him. I think that was part of what he was trying to get done. I think so. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I can't say if you did something and you did it, but you can stay, unassailable for 8 years, and the statute of limitations 7 years. Yeah.
So, no, I think I definitely think you hit the nail on the head with the idea that, obviously Trump said some inflammatory things on January 6th, but I don't think you take an otherwise peaceful group of people who are trying to approach life in a rational way. I don't think you take a group like that and say, we're going to march like hell, and then they hear that and say, okay, we're going to tear down the Capitol. There's got to be, right? There's got to be a pattern of things that build them up to that point, to where, like you said, they came there that day, they were ready, like they were ready to go.
Right. Yeah. And the thing, I'm hearing things, boy, from friends of mine and people in the media, that, man, there's some angry people out there that are ready to do a lot of damage. I heard about, there was a young man in a group, the number one group, this domestic terrorist stuff is high on the FBI watch list, right? But domestic terrorism in general, and there's one group in this vast group of domestic terrorists or potential domestic terrorists that the FBI is more cautious of and watching. I forgot the name of them.
Proud Boys?
What?
Proud Boys?
No. When I heard about them like 2-3 days ago, I had not heard the name of this group before. But they had an ex-member. Okay, they had a guy kill 2 people. This was within the last month. He killed 2 people. And so the cops got him, and he was cooperative. And what he explained was, they asked him, well, did you do that? Yeah, I did. Well, why'd you do it? It's because, okay, I'm a former member of, and he named the group. I forgot the name of the group. I'm not holding out on you on purpose. I said, I was in that group, and these guys have some very bad things planned. They were about to do one of the things that they had planned. I mean, it was imminent within that day or the next day or something. So he killed the 2 guys because he couldn't go along with their deal, but he also couldn't allow it to happen. He knew it was going to happen, right? And he's a member of the group that the FBI is targeting the most. They're number one on their watch list, right? And so my point is that this kind of, I mean, can you blame Trump for trying to stay in office, as unpresidential as he was, as probably unfit for office? I won't say unqualified, because I'm qualified, you're qualified. We're over 35 and don't have records. We're born in the US. That's it. That's it. Okay. So, but certainly unpresidential and probably not suited for office.
Yeah, I think that's putting it nicely.
Okay. You know,
Yeah.
Well, I think that even a guy like him, okay, you get elected, your number one job is to get reelected. That's it. Get reelected, right? And so he was trying to stay in office. How do you do that? Well, he rallied previously, sort of unspoken for a group, okay, and made them feel good again. And they had a catchphrase. MAGA bought a bunch of hats and gave them out, and people got excited. It was kind of like, I'm not comparing Trump to Hitler, but it was out of the Hitler playbook. Okay.
Right.
You rally people that feel like they're unheard, unspoken, and like white males can feel that way,
Right.
I mean, because I kind of understand, when you've had all that you, but the general you've always had the attention, always made the rules, changed the rules, never really had to compete on a level playing field. And now, based on current demographics, within about 15 years, minorities won't be no group is going to be the majority. There won't be a majority.
Right.
Minorities combined, which is kind of an oxymoron because we don't all vote the same or think the same or whatever, right?
Right.
But combined just in pure numbers, something like 15 years or 20 years, minorities will become like 51% of the population. That bothers some people.
Yeah.
It should, but it does,
Sure.
And Trump knew that. Trump doesn't care. Trump's going to be rich. It doesn't matter. He might not be alive.
Right.
He doesn't care,
Yeah.
But he knew that if I talk to that issue and I talk to those people, I'm going to get them excited. And I might have a chance to win, and I might have a chance to stay in office. Honestly, I think he's going to run again. And I think that he will use that same, he'll try to sound smarter, like tone it down just a little bit, but not so much that it doesn't get those people's attention.
Right.
Okay. Right.
I gotta grab something really quick. I'll be back in like
all right
10 seconds. Okay.
Okay. And while my pal is gone, I want to say to Chris's listening audience that he's an amazing guy. This is definitely a dude that you want to be following. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, get on his channel, hit subscribe, hit like, and give this amazing young man your support, because trust me, he is doing all he can to support you and ideological decency. He's the bomb.
Yeah, I heard you talking. Are we talking over there?
Yeah. I was gonna let you be surprised when you came back and muted. Yeah.
See, all right, you have to
throwing you some shout out.
Yeah, I heard. Yeah, well, I thank you. I guess. Again, I wasn't doing that for that reason or anything, but I'll give you your check after the show. No, I was gonna say, yeah, definitely good points you brought up there. I think it's interesting. Trump, it almost makes me think of. I took this class on feminism when I was in college, and I remember the phrase, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and just in the whole with suffrage the movement and even through civil rights, like there was always things that would kind of push the movement back. And in a lot of ways, and even thinking about what you were saying about sort of tapping into this white maybe Midwestern type blue collar demographic who they're hearing about how they have white privilege, and they're hearing about police brutality against blacks and their, affirmative action. And from their purview, maybe they don't really feel that privileged, whether it be because they grew up in poverty themselves, or they're working hard to try to make ends meet. And to the 2 steps forward, 1 step back, it's almost like Trump was that 1 step back. We're moving forward. I mean, we got gay marriage a while back, and we're I guess Roe v. Wade could also be a step back. But Trump did seem like a representation of the worst of us, the worst of American values from yesterday, from yesteryear, from when America was great, right? He sort of represented the people that were holding on to that in the face of the people that are trying to move forward.
Absolutely. Yeah, lots of steps forward. And if I could convey one thing, and I teach 25 kids at a time, not nations at a time, but if there was one thing I would convey if I could, it's one nation. The gains of people who have been ignored, discriminated against, left out, murdered, not allowed to vote, sit on juries, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The gains of those people are not the losses of the majority.
Right.
And we can all rise. We should all rise. This is one nation. We look different in some cases, but that's what the nation looks like.
Right.
And you know what? I'm not happy that your traditional Midwestern Caucasian male is feeling left out. I don't want him to feel left out. I want him to feel like he's a part of the nation, like he's always been, just as important as his great granddaddy was. Okay, it's just a difference in the way that we get things done.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, simply that means that it includes everybody. Take President Biden's cabinet. This is the most diverse cabinet in no president, including Obama, had a cabinet this diverse. Well, this is not the loss of Joe Sixpack, Illinois. Okay, this is how the country looks, and this is how cabinet should look, and school boards should look, and everything. Right?
Yeah.
It's inclusive. Don't be afraid of that.
Right.
That doesn't. Some people look at CRT, critical race theory, right? Mm-hmm. Which is just a fancy way to say the other side of history,
right?
The part that wasn't told. That's all it is, right? Mm-hmm. We're not gonna seize power and enslave white people, or even, well, you know what? Well, they shot, but I mean, you're not gonna say, well, black cops have the right. None of that's gonna happen, The nation would be better. People would be, happier, because guess what? There are fewer hurdles. If you talk about meritocracy, want meritocracy, and inclusion, that's the surest way to get it. Right. You see? And no one should be afraid of that. No one should be afraid of that.
Totally. I think it's ironic when we see right-wing pundits of today, someone like a Ben Shapiro. I remember when Joe Biden picked Kamala Harris for his VP, and he had even said before that he was gonna pick a female VP, and Ben Shapiro was so critical of him. Why does it have to be a woman? I mean, why does it matter that it's specifically a woman? I'm like, how about the fact that in 200 years, there's never been a woman president or vice president,
right?
Or until Obama, even a black president, and especially not a black female president. So yeah, I mean, sorry that, you have 200 50 consecutive years of being a white dude. Like, God forbid one time we have a black like the fact that it's eye-opening when you see how much ire that can stir to have something like that. And I'm not even a huge Kamala Harris fan, but it's the idea that you would be averse to somebody because it's almost like they use that to shield their own misogyny and racism by saying you're like Joe Biden is the racist because, or the misogynist because he's being patronizing to women or whatever you want to call it. Like, he's only picking her because she's black, as opposed to like, maybe we just want to like help other people get represented too, right? It's not like white men are the only people that exist in America. Maybe it's kind of good to have a little bit more proportionate representation. It's
very simply put, it's
crazy.
Tactic, maybe a little projection, but certainly diversion, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe, sometimes people they know what's wrong with them, or they know what they don't feel totally sure about. So then they'll say, "Oh, Chris, and then whatever they feel about themselves, they'll say that to you just to shock you or throw you off or to make you look worse or whatever, or maybe to push attention away from them." But see, that's exactly how I'd come back with it. Now, if I was President Biden, I probably wouldn't have said, "Well, I'm going to pick a black woman or pick a woman." I think he said black. I'm not sure, but I would have just made the choice.
Yeah,
right.
I agree.
Because those critics, I mean, that gives them something to target.
Yeah.
Oh, you're being biased, right?
Yeah.
But those same guys wouldn't have said, "Well, George Washington was biased, and John Adams, who I think was quite a decent guy, and Thomas Jefferson," because guess what? Those guys never even had a woman in a cabinet that I know of. They were all the guys. And see, some people, that takes us back to making America great again.
Right.
All right. Well, in the minds of some, and they probably wouldn't say this or wouldn't say the N-word or anything like that, America was great when it was run by and owned by and controlled by the type of people that it should be controlled by.
Right.
Well, you know what that means.
Yeah.
Okay. People like that are just going to have to either get mad and go sit in the corner, come on board, join the 20th century, 21st century, go sit in the corner, or just get old and die, But the move, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. There's no point in being angry about it. You see, it's just going to happen. I don't know. It's disappointing, even more than because I'm hearing people say what I think are ridiculous things. But in this ground, I've been a few places. I've been to 30-something countries. In this amazing world, we live. People our age, people older than us, don't know what it's like to be number two. Have no idea. Been number one.
Right.
Things, controlling things since 1946, since the end of World War II. Right. So somebody who's my age, I have no idea what it's like not to be the eye of the world, not to have the most power, the most money, the most influence, the most everything, basically. Right. So we're sitting pretty high on the hog.
Yeah.
What do you have to be mad about? What are you worried about? Your life's going to be fine. That's what I'll say to them. And just because somebody else gets a slice of the pie does not mean that you're not going to have plenty of pie.
Right. Yeah. It's amazing when you think about it. I guess that's where that phrase "first world problems" come from.
What phrase?
The first world problems, like.
Oh, right.
In being here, it's like when your biggest problem is too many people trying to get a fair shake. I mean,
right.
I was glad that you brought up that Biden said that I don't remember either if he said a black woman or just a woman, but I do remember he said he campaigned on that, which I also disagreed with because I didn't like that he was sort of using that because he knew that would gain favor with some people. But also in his defense, and sort of to your point, somebody making that decision to hire, like to pick a Kamala Harris, like a woman vice president, that is a deliberate decision. It's not like you're not accidentally like picking a name from a hat and, oh, it just happens to be a woman. I think the point is that up until now, it has never been a woman. And so at some point, yeah, you gotta change things up. Let's get some fair representation.
Right. You know,
I
Chris,
just-
I'm going to do something like the same thing that I disagree with President Biden doing. I want to see a woman president or two during my lifetime. I want,
agree.
you know what, look, there are checks and balances. Nobody can go in there and just run them up. Okay.
Right.
She'd have to get things, pass things just like everybody else did,
Sure.
you know.